Hi everyone, welcome back to the 30-day wellness journey. Day 28, we're going to talk all about boundaries, the importance of boundaries, why we need to implement boundaries, and how to start to set boundaries. So let's get started. So boundaries are there to keep us safe. They're there to help protect us. They're there to help keep our stress levels lower. If we didn't have boundaries, there would be no real start of understanding of where one person's comfort zone begins and where it ends. And so boundaries are our way of either verbally telling somebody, this is my space. So with boundary setting, it's really easy to identify physical boundaries, right? So if someone is entering your physical space, right, if they get really close, you might step away, you might go like, oh, and that might kind of give them a signal like they've kind of violated your boundary space. But the emotional boundaries and mental boundaries, relationship boundaries, family boundaries, friend boundaries, those tend to be a little bit harder to either identify or even implement because it's not this really black and white of someone's entering your space and you're like, your body's naturally pulling away. So when you're thinking about boundaries, sometimes it's easier just to start with our first set of boundaries, and that can be boundaries with yourself. And so that might look like, I need to make boundaries of, I have to go to bed at a certain hour so I can get enough hours. So that might be a boundary that you tell your friends and family, hey, I can't stay out late because I need to make sure that I can get to bed on time because I have an early morning so I can get enough rest to kind of nourish my body. So that would be a boundary that you've set with yourself and that you're going to implement with your friends and family. You might also have boundaries around external things such as drinking or even doing drugs. When someone offers you an alcoholic beverage and you are sober, you would set a boundary and say, hey, no thank you, I don't drink, or not today, or whatever kind of story you want to tell them about why you're not drinking. You don't have to disclose why you're not drinking at all. You can just say no thank you, but that is a boundary that you've set with that person. And so boundaries, again, are there to kind of help us navigate life, how to navigate where we want to allow someone in and where we don't want someone to be let in. Boundaries are also there to really help us manage our stress. If we set a boundary that every Sunday is self-care day and we make sure that we take time for ourselves and we nurture ourselves, and if someone says, hey, do you want to hang out? That would be a boundary that you set. No, thank you. Sunday is self-care day. That's the day that I want to kind of be with myself. What happens is when boundaries get to be a little bit more challenging, and some of the boundaries that are the hardest to set are the ones with people who are closest to us. So for example, with our family, right? So you might be really upset if you're throwing a party and your family always shows up late. What you can do is you could set a boundary with them and you can say, hey, I really appreciate because I put so much time and effort if you could show up on time, right? That might feel really yucky, that might feel really hard to say, but that's you putting a boundary and that's you advocating for yourself. Or maybe even with your coworker, maybe you say, when you're at a meeting and you're presenting a project and the other person takes all the credit, maybe you talk with them, you say, hey, I'd really appreciate if you would acknowledge some of the work that I've done by saying Alyssa did this on the project or it was her idea, instead of you acting like you had done the entire project or the presentation. So sometimes with those boundaries that we have to start by advocating for our needs, and implementing how we treat ourselves is also going to be a really great way for people to kind of see how to treat us, right? If we treat ourselves really poorly and we don't nurture our self-care and give us our time and needs to kind of nurture that, then other people are going to see, oh, she doesn't care about herself, so I don't have to care about her. I can show up late, or I can take advantage of her, or I can do all these different things. And so it's so important for you to set that boundary. The problem with boundary setting is you can't just put it up once, like put a sign that says do not enter and then think it's done. Boundary setting is something you have to remind and implement all the time. Boundary setting can be very exhausting and very tiring, which is why it's so hard to be consistent, because sometimes you want to just say, it's not worth the struggle, it's not worth the fight, it's not worth the argument. Who cares if they show up late to my party? And it's like, well, you care. Obviously, that was a boundary that you implemented with somebody in the first place. Why not follow through and just keep reminding them, hey, I really need you to do X, Y, and Z. And reminding yourself that some days you're not going to feel like you have the voice or the energy to hold that boundary and put it in place. And just remind yourself that the more consistent you are, the better people are going to understand your boundaries. And at first, people are going to push back. People are going to say, who do you think you are for telling me to show up on time to your party? Or they might get defensive or just keep pushing back. And when people push back on your boundaries, that is a really good indicator that you need to stay firm in your boundaries because they are used to getting their way. And so reminding yourself that if someone's pushing back on your boundary, first ask yourself, why do I have this boundary in place? And two, how do I cultivate that inner ability to say, no, this is my boundary, please respect it. And so boundaries are all about safety, respect, and just a way to manage life with the least amount of stress. So your reflective question today is, what boundary have you been avoiding? Is there a person that you've been avoiding talking to about a boundary that you've been setting? Have you been avoiding your own sleep boundaries of maybe no phones in the bedroom or going to sleep at a certain hour? Ask yourself, what kind of boundaries have you been avoiding in your life that you kind of need to shine some light on and kind of investigate how you can incorporate that back in your life. So your inspired action is, I want you to look inward and I want you to set a boundary with yourself. So when you think about any of those 8 dimensions of self-care, think about one of those areas that you can implement today. So that might be implementing a boundary of going to bed at a certain time. As soon as you get home from work or clocking out of work, you're not responding to emails, you're not doing any work, that you're just home and you're present and you're leaving work at work and home at home. So think about a boundary that you can set with yourself, an internal boundary that's going to help you kind of manage all the stressors that we have in this daily life. So we only have 2 more days left in this 30-day wellness journey. Keep up the amazing work. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and don't forget to subscribe. I'll catch you in tomorrow's video. Awesome. Have a great day.